This little art station here is my old desk, and it used to be covered in piles of parts and was a bit cramped, especially when working on projects. If you're a creator, you've probably had some similar struggles yourself. Organization has never been my strong suit, but I hope to change that with some help from today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. Oh, and if you want some Middleton-made hoodies or shirts, now's the time to grab them. Bad Attitude Department has them on sale in your cart. It'll show the new price. So come along as I design my perfect solution for all this organizational stuff, and I'll bring you along for the CAD so maybe we can learn a thing or two together and assemble my new FlexiSpot E7 Plus desk. Hey there makers, welcome back to Middleton Made. The desk I've been using for the last couple years was made from butcher block countertop that I picked up at a hardware store and some cheap Amazon legs that went up a little bit, but all of it was too small, too wobbly. Spilled drinks from simply typing while it's in the standing mode happened more than once, and that's a deal breaker in my book. This is where FlexiSpot comes in. They were kind enough to send me the FlexiSpot 4-leg standing desk called the E7 Plus. Thanks, cuties. The desk showed up in 3 somewhat heavy boxes, one for the top and one for each leg. The 4th box is the FlexiSpot premium ergonomic chair called the C7, but we'll get to that one more in the next video. Assembly went rather smooth, with the instructions being clear and easy with large illustrations. A 4-year-old could have followed these with no problems. I only had one hiccup, and it was at this spot where I noticed that the pre-drilled holes didn't quite align with the legs after they were assembled, but I just used one of the holes as an index and measured the front to be the same distance away, and boom, all together with some Dungeons and Daddies on in the background, I easily built this thing in about an hour. Don't worry, it's not a BDSM podcast. And that brings us here. Sitting at this desk for the first time, the first thing I noticed is just how much more sturdy this thing is. When I mentioned the weight of the components before, I think that really helps us keep this thing grounded and rigid. This thing's weighted for 540 pounds of static load, so I don't feel any wobble. And if there was a little bit of wobble, there's adjustable feet on the floor below, so there's not going to be any issues with that. And the motors, yes, 2 motors, raise and lower the desktop quite rapidly and smoothly, so you can make sure that you're not sitting on your tush all day long. The legs are 3-stage, so they keep any wobble down to a minimum, and even while extended high enough for a tall user like myself, I don't even have it maxed out, and I'm 6'1". I also let my tablet charge overnight using the USB built into the keypad up front. And last, it's hard to miss, but all this space. This FlexiSpot setup is a lot more of a premium experience than the DIY setup that I was used to before. So let's talk about what we'll do with all this space. There's already like a handful of things that I need to have handy and quick access to right on my desktop. So let's go up there and jump into SolidWorks and come up with some solutions together. All right, so when we first open up SolidWorks, we need to create a part. And I'm thinking we're gonna create a coaster here to get rid of those water rings. So the first thing we're gonna do is choose a plane to sketch on. And since we're doing something that's more of a top-down shape, we chose the top plane. I took my calipers and I measured the bottom of most of my cups, and they're around 3 inches. So we're gonna go 3.2 on this one. And the reason we're gonna do this is we're gonna create a small base, and then off of that base, we're gonna create a loft. I think lofts are a tool that you should get really familiar with. I'm gonna show you the very basics on this one, and we'll get more into that in a future video. What you're seeing right here is you can actually grab the top plane that was sketched on, hold Alt, and you can drag it off of that to create an offset plane. So with that plane offset, the specific distance that I want, I think we chose like 0.25, 0.3. What we're gonna do here is sketch on that plane to the overall dimension that we want it. And now we have 2 different shapes that we can basically loft between. So we're gonna choose those 2 sketches. We're gonna choose the loft base, and boom. You can kind of see that it creates that perfect chamfer from the size that I need to the size that it was. And I could go all the way down to the base if I didn't want to have that base perfectly flat, but you know me, I like my hard edges, so I don't want it completely rounded. And before we go over to Bambu Studio to show you what makes this coaster a little bit of a cooler design, we will add the Middle to Made logo, of course. Alright, so let's take a quick look. Everything looks fine. And you'll see with the special sauce when we go over here to Bambu Studio. Alright, so we got this thing loaded up. We'll lay it flat. We're going to print this in the PA high temp filament. And what we're going to do here is struggle a little bit to get that material. It won't sync for some reason, so I think the RFID chip in the filament from Bambu is messed up, so we'll just manually say that that is what it is. Alright, so now that we have the filament labeled properly, we'll come in here and we'll choose how many walls. This doesn't need to be a super strong thing, but the magic for this whole thing is 0 top layers. What that's going to do for us is let us use the infill pattern as basically the top of the coaster. So the moisture from the glass should be able to sink down into the honeycombs on top of the coaster. So let's slice it and see what that's going to look like. There we go. Yeah, so that's looking just about right for me. We got no supports because I want that to just kind of print in air and see if we can get the logo to come through. Alright, so with the file sliced, we'll send it off to the printer and see how this thing turns out. What you're going to notice here is even though I dried this filament for over 24 hours, it just doesn't look the best, but good enough for a coaster. Alright, so for the second item, I'm going to create a little organizer for my calipers, scissors, pens, that kind of stuff, and my Xbox controller. So same thing, we're going to choose a plane to sketch on first. We're going to start with the top plane. I'm thinking I'm going to want to print this on its back. We'll see, I might change it to the bottom. But what I'm going to do is just basically use the Smart Dimension tool to set the size of everything, and I'm thinking I want the front of this to be rounded. So I'm going to show you this little tool. And what's really nice about the tool that I'm going to show you here is instead of having to draw like a full circle, it will allow us to just have that radius right the first time. So as long as it's dimensioned properly, and right here I'm going to set the tangencies, you'll have a perfect transition between the flat edge to the rounded surface. So you won't have to worry about trying to eyeball it or get it close or set it to like the floating points that are on the top and sides of a circle. It will just work. Alright, so we're going to speed it up just a tiny bit and use the offset entities tool. I'm thinking a wall of maybe like 0.1 should be fine. This should be plenty thick, even for like PLA+. The next thing I need to do, and I'm just going to kind of play with it here, so this isn't necessarily the right way if you have an idea of how you're going to do it in your mind already, but I'm just kind of playing with the idea of where the next cubby holes are going to be for the pens. And I'm liking how this is looking, so what I'll do, let's see, we'll set the size of this one so that way I know the dimension of it. We're going to get everything nice and rounded, and then following that we'll use the linear sketch tool or pattern, and that will offset the one little square I just created, so that way I don't have to try to mimic it or mirror it. I can just use the linear sketch pattern and boom, it should automatically just work. Just gotta get the distance correct. Tidy up the lines a little bit. Because I was just kind of playing with it, you can kind of tell that things aren't really working the most proper as it could be, but if I had an idea of what I was going to do before, I could have just done it correct in the first place. But hey, this is a one-off product, and it's something that I'm probably never going to go in and adjust again. If I do this again, it'll probably be like a new design that's inspired by it. So I'm a little all right with some jank right here, and jank's okay, right? All right, so now with the base sketch done, we're gonna extrude the walls. I don't think I really need to go higher than like 3.5, so let's try that. Just kind of getting a good look for it, kind of getting a feel of where it should go from here. I think our next step is just gonna be to add a base to this. I might wanna add a cut. Yeah, let's do a cut real quick. So what this is going to do is just give it a little bit of style. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm liking where that's going. All right, so let's get that base on here now. So we'll select the face on the bottom white sketch, and the easiest thing is just to hit convert entities. Boom. Now all of those outside edges are converted. And I think it'd be nice to have like a small little tray up front, and it will be a pretty small tray, but it might be nice to put like springs or little nuts or stuff like that that are just kind of loose. So I think this is going to be a good move. And the base of this doesn't really have to be too thick, so 0.12 should be plenty enough to withstand me dropping a pair of scissors or something into one of the holes. Even after a long time, I'm pretty confident that it's not going to degrade to the point where it's going to break. Right here, I am just going to convert those lines and then offset them, so that way we can make a small little wall. And just like all the other walls, we'll make it 0.1. And right here, we're going to use that tool again. So instead of having to copy over the whole radius, now we just have a perfect line on that side. And boom, now that you can see a color inside of the shape, you know that it is a full shape ready to be extruded. And we'll get more in depth in a lot of these things in a future video. I just wanted to cover some of the basics here. That way we could create some stuff for this new desk. So at this point, I'm thinking we should move on to building the little stand for the Xbox controller. I'm still thinking that we're going to print it on the back face, so I'm just going to kind of play with some shapes to see what that will look like, and if I can find like some shapes and some angles that I find enjoyable. It's about right here where I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what, this looks okay, but it's not really looking the best. So I think we should just print it on the bottom face. So tidying up a few things in order to make that possible. And then we'll go in and add some fillets and chamfers to kind of make everything look a little bit more pretty. And then we'll use the asymmetric fillet tool, and that will give us some nice fillets that aren't completely symmetric. I think that will really be a nice touch for the controller area. And then just a reminder, this is basically just like a touch of a lot of different things. We're gonna go into a lot deeper on a lot of these different tools and really show how to use them, where to use them, and that kind of stuff in future videos. Now this last tool is the wrap tool. So I'm creating just kind of a shape that I want to have wrapped around the front round surface here. I'm thinking if I really like this, I'll eventually texture it or do something to this shape. But now that you can see that it's selected, I choose the face that I want it projected on. I say, go for it. What's really great is after we get this cut into it, if the sizes are just a little off, you can just modify the sketch and be able to adjust it from there. You just need to edit the value and then rebuild. And boom, goes over just a little bit more. Now it's pretty close to the same size as the other one. The one thing is, because it's wrapping around, sometimes fillets and chamfers get a little weird. So you can see in here, it's just like showing up pretty weird. So I'll say, instead of doing the line, screw it, I'll just do the whole inside face. And there we go. I think that is a good enough little organizer to get the things that I really need for basically all my projects ready to go. Alright, so now that we've got this thing loaded into Bambu Studio, we'll use the face selection tool to make sure it sits upright in the proper orientation. This shouldn't require any sort of supports because we use a sharp enough angle on the controller stand. I'm just kind of making sure everything looks okay. I'm kind of figuring out what kind of like aesthetic choices I want to make to it. I think we're gonna go two-tone. Yeah, let's do orange and the black that I got loaded up already. I think that'll look good. So we'll set the settings real quick so that we don't have to try to do this later. I want to add the top layers back on for this one. We'll look a little goofy with some exposed hexagons. It doesn't need to be like the strongest print ever, but 8 walls, 5 tops and bottoms should suffice. Alright, so let's just slice it and see what we're looking at for time. 3:36, so not too bad. That is good enough. I don't think we need to adjust any settings. Normally I'll see if we can adjust settings either by adjusting the layer heights to a bigger height or making the walls less. I think this is good. So we'll go in and we'll add that second color now. Let's see. Alright, we got the black. Turn the height range way up. And if you just click and drag once you find the height that you want to, it should just fill in everything above it, but you will be taxing your system a little bit. So if you're on a slower computer, this may be a little glitchy for you. Everything looks good. I think this is good enough to send. Oh, I gotta get rid of that prime tower. If I was doing something with more details where the layers were changing colors between, like not just one even thing, we need the prime tower, but I don't think we need it now. So, all right, let's print. Alright, so you got your apple juice, and oh no, you got a ring. So this coaster should be able to prevent that, and what I've noticed is the hexagons actually collect that water pretty well, and then it just kind of evaporates. So I'm really actually pretty happy with this, even though the filament wasn't the cleanest. The organizer is actually a little bit smaller than I imagined. And I could probably make it a tiny bit taller. So maybe we'll do that in a different episode, but for right now, I don't have a whole lot to hold on my desk, and it holds everything just fine. I could probably use with a little bit more to fill in, since it's not completely filled in on the desk.
Thanks for coming along and learning more about CAD with me. And thanks to FlexiSpot for making this whole video possible. I'll be picking up a cable tray soon to manage all these wires, but if you have other ideas of things that I can design to throw up on this desk and maybe show you guys some new features in SolidWorks,
let me know in the comments down below. If you want to learn more about FlexiSpot or pick up the E7 Plus desk for yourself, or anything else you saw in today's video, check the description for links down below. Oh, and shout out to Lackluster and 3220, all of my other player homies as well. You guys frickin' rock. You can't stop the signal. We'll see you guys next time.